And
Hi. Oh, let me know.
go ahead.
Hi, Alexa. How are you this morning?
Hi, Ashley. I'm great. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you also. I'm so excited to talk to you about this series. Woo! I mean, it's up there on the list of true crime docuseries, right? You're the showrunner and executive producer. You're no stranger to the true crime genre. This series, Devil in Disguise, dives right into the true crime story of convicted sex offender and serial killer that are known as the clown killer clown, John Wayne Gacy. Alexa, how much of this story did you know before getting involved in this project?
I personally didn't really know a lot about John Wayne Gacy. It was a relatively fresh story for me coming in, so I had a lot to learn because, as you have probably gathered, there's lots and lots of information, and the story spans, over 5 decades, and it took many months to really familiarize myself with all the content. So I didn't know that much at all.
What was it about this story? Because, like you said, it spans 5 decades. This is not a new story. This has been around for many, many decades. Many people are familiar with the story. What was it about it that piqued your interest for you to revisit and to retell?
So the project was brought to our team at NBC News Studios by one of the executive producers, Tracy Ullman, not the British comedian, and her partner, Allison True, who's a journalist in Chicago. And they both had lived there for many years and had started looking into some of the outstanding questions in the Gacy case starting in about 2011. And they had assembled quite a bit of research and noticed that there was still a number of outstanding mysteries that lingered around the story. They reached out to many different people in association with the case, and they came to us with an assembled amount of research, and then we built the project from there.
Um, each episode opens with a very telling prison interview with Case Gacy in his own words. These interviews are very revealing of who he was, who this man was. Why was it important for you guys to open each episode with him talking and showing the audiences, the audience or the viewers at home, who was this person? Why was it important for you guys to do it that way?
Well, the Gacy interview is about 3.5 hours long in total, and there's so much material that is so rich and so compelling and so confounding built into that interview. And one of the reasons we decided to weave it throughout the series the way that we did was so that viewers could understand, as they learned more and more about the case, what kind of person he really was, how he sort of seamlessly switched between truth and fiction, and how he spun a narrative around his own story whenever it suited him. And I think viewers, as they watch each episode and learn more and more about the case, they're able to contextualize what they're seeing even more and pay closer and closer attention to the little details of his behavior, whether it's particular physical demonstrations or features, or if it's just stories that he tells in one breath, saying one thing and in the next saying something totally different.
Right. When he's with the book and he's opening the book and he's looking at the victims, it's as if he's talking about, a game or a football game or something, to that effect. Um, Devil in Disguise explores Gacy's early run ins with the law, which happened back in Iowa, including a sodomy conviction, which led to jail time. He was supposed to do 10 years, but only ended up doing 8 months. Even his psyche valve stated that he would continue to commit sex acts. That's what he was, evaluated by a doctor, a professional, said that he would continue to do this. Could more have been done by law enforcement to help prevent these killings from even happening? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is one of the big questions around this case because, as you say, one of the biggest tragedies of the Gacy story is that he was convicted of this crime in 1968. And had he served his full 10-year sentence, he never could have committed any of the murders that he committed in Chicago. So, all those 33, at least 33 boys that we know of, young men, would still be alive. And so that's really hard to swallow. As far as why he got out of prison early, it's a good question. It's one that we, tried to delve into within the series. You know, is it because he was able to talk his way out of it, like he was able to do so many other times? He's a very manipulative, very charming person, and he often seemed to get his way. Um, as far as the psychiatric evaluation, it definitely flagged the possibility that he might continue this kind of behavior, and said that, there's nothing that's going to change this man. So he was already at that time fixed in his ways. Whether he was also beginning to kill at that time, we obviously don't know that. All we know about is the 33 bodies that were discovered on his property and in the river nearby that he was convicted of their murders. But certainly people in our series raise the question, could he have killed earlier? Did he kill others?
So many questions, right? I mean, I feel like you guys could do another part two of this. You have interviews from people who had never spoken before, and even his second wife, Carol, which it's so alarming. She said, often in that interview that she smelled an odor, and she would tell him, what is that smell coming from under the house? You need to do something about that smell. Um, why do you think Gacy was able to get away for so long without being caught? Because even in Chicago, he had several arrests. I talked to Raphael about this, even in Chicago. So take away the Iowa stuff, right? When he got to Chicago, he was arrested multiple times and each time was released. I don't know. Why do you think that he was able to escape law enforcement for so long?
I think the fact that he was able to fool his own wife, who was living in his house with him, and she was seeing some evidence of strange behavior, but still never suspected anything to the degree of what was actually happening. And also, he lied to her. I mean, you expect your spouse to be honest with you. You expect to be able to trust them to some degree. And he had constructed an entire fictional set of stories around himself that clearly she believed, because why would she have any reason not to? And as far as the smell goes in the basement, I mean, it's one of the most chilling things that comes up in the series, I think, is this woman found out after the fact that she was living on a mass grave. And I mean, how horrifying is that?
It's completely horrifying. It also raises the question of, do you really know who people are, right? Like, to be married to somebody like that and not even know what was going on right up under your nose. Investigators identified a victim as early as 2017. Six still remain, if I'm not mistaken. Do you hope, or do you think that this series will help shed light to help bring some kind of closure to those victims that are still out there?
I mean, it's always the hope that one of the byproducts of a series like this is that there are answers to some of the lingering questions, including who are these six unidentified victims that the Cook County Sheriff is still looking into. Absolutely, it's possible, just as I knew nothing or next to nothing about John Wayne Gacy when I started the project, there are going to be people in the world who don't know who John Wayne Gacy is, who don't have any reason to believe that their loved one might have had any association with him. So perhaps, it's always possible that somebody comes forward who didn't have this information before, and our series discloses that to them, and it makes some sort of difference, and maybe another case, another body will be identified. Certainly we hope that to be the case.
Definitely. Alexa, in your work on this series, what did you uncover or what was left out? Because I'm sure that there were so many pieces that you guys just couldn't fit in. What were some pieces that you guys couldn't fit in that you would like to share with us today?
I mean, there are always things that end up on the cutting room floor in these types of series. One of the great things that we were able to do, I think, in our documentary was, because it was told across 6 hours, we actually were able to include a ton of detail. And when you have these first-person accounts of whether it's the victims themselves, talking about their experiences, or the surviving family members, or the attorneys and investigators who are able to tell more personal and more nuanced stories. That's, there's a lot that actually did end up in the series. As far as what ended up on the cutting room floor, I can think of a dozen things, but one of the things that strikes me off the top of my head is one of the attorneys that we spoke to talked about how he had nightmares about this case and how it really affected him emotionally and psychologically. And at that time, it wasn't something that people really talked about. You didn't have that kind of support through this kind of trauma. And you have to think about these investigators showing up at the house every day, digging up pieces of bodies. No one had ever seen anything like this before, and it really impacted them emotionally.
It was devastating. What is the lesson to be learned from Devil in Disguise?
I think that obviously people are always going to wonder how this could have happened when somebody who looks and speaks like the guy next door and is a successful member of society can operate as a mass murderer behind closed doors. That's always going to be something that people want to know more about. And maybe some insight into red flags and what to look for in people like that can help guide the future and can help other people be identified sooner. We also hope to educate people about the impact of these kinds of crimes on victims. That's always a really important goal. And of course, it's to capture a historical account of a story that is reaching its natural sell by date, if you will, because a lot of the folks who are really closely involved are getting older. Some of them have already passed away. So you always only have a limited, finite amount of time to tell these kinds of stories.
Right. And like you talked about the victims being male victims, we don't often hear the stories of male victims. They're mostly centered around girls. And so I like that this story, opened the door and opened the conversation for people to have that males do and can be victimized, by males or by women as well. Thank you so much, Alexa, for this series. Do you guys have plans to expand on it at all? Is there with the cutting room floor footage, maybe a series two, a season two of it? Can you talk about that a little?
We don't currently have plans to expand it, but you never know. It's been getting tremendous response from the public and from critics, so we're very excited about that, and you just never know where that could take us next.
Thank you so much, Alexa. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ashley. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Where is the buzz?
Oh, yeah.
Where is the buzz? You said
We used to be
was
a
mine,
singer.
oh
Oh,
mine.
where is the buzz?
Ooh.